The girl in the rain. The rain was cold that night, falling in thin silver lines under the flickering streetlights of the human colony market. Most stalls had closed hours ago. The smell of wet metal and Old Spice hung in the air. Jonas Rell walked alone, his boots splashing through shallow puddles. He was on his way home from the docks, his jacket collar pulled high against the wind. He had worked a long shift as a cargo clerk checking manifests, arguing with slow loaders and drinking bad coffee. He didn't expect to see anyone here. But halfway down the row of locked stalls, he saw movement between two crates stacked against the wall. At first, he thought it was a stray animal, something looking for shelter. But when he looked closer, he saw a small figure, crouched in the shadows. The figure was a girl. Her skin was pale violet, her hair a deep shade of silver blue, dripping wet and clinging to her thin face. Her eyes were wide and silver, reflecting the weak light. She wore a torn tunic, no shoes, and clutched a worn satchel to her chest, like it was the only thing she owned. Jonas slowed his steps. "You lost?" he asked. The girl didn't answer. At first, she just stared at him, like she was trying to decide if he was dangerous. From the corner of his eye, Jonas saw a tall woman walking away fast down the far end of the market. She glanced back once, her face hard, then disappeared into the rain. The girl took a shaky breath. Her voice was soft, so soft, he almost didn't hear it. "Be my dad. I'll be good." Jonas froze. He had not expected that. "What?" he asked, thinking maybe he'd misheard. She looked down, avoiding his eyes. "I won't make trouble. I can work. Just don't leave me." Jonas felt a strange knot in his chest. He wasn't anyone's father. He lived alone in a one-room apartment. He liked things quiet. And yet, something about the way she stood there in the rain, clutching that satchel, made him hesitate. "Where's your family?" he asked. She bit her lip. She left, said, "I'm not worth food." Jonas looked down the street where the woman had vanished. He could still hear faint footsteps in his mind. This girl, had she just been abandoned? "You can't stay here," he said. "The patrols come at night. They'll take you to the holding block." Her grip on the satchel tightened. "And take me with you, please." Jonas knew what that meant. If he took her in, he'd be responsible. He could be fined. The alien authorities didn't like humans keeping children of other species without permission. Still, he thought of leaving her there in the cold, alone. He sighed and stepped closer. "If I take you, you do as I say. You don't run off. You don't lie to me. Understand?" She nodded so fast, it almost made her stumble. Jonas gestured. "Come on, then." She moved quickly to his side, but didn't take his hand. Instead, she held onto the edge of his coat, walking close enough to match his steps exactly. They moved through the narrow streets, the rain falling harder now. Jonas kept glancing at her. She never looked around, never asked where they were going. When they reached his apartment building, he led her up the narrow stairs. His place was small, just a bed, a table, and a kitchen corner. The heater rattled. In the wall. "Sit," he said, pointing to the table. She sat quietly, watching as he poured hot water into a cup and dropped in a tea cube. He placed it in front of her, then put a slice of bread on a plate. She looked at it like it was something rare. "For me?" "Yes, eat." She took tiny bites, chewing slowly, like she was afraid the bread might disappear. Jonas leaned against the counter, studying her. She had the careful movements of someone who'd learned not to take up space. When she finished, she wiped her fingers on her sleeve. "I can sleep on the floor." Jonas shook his head. "You'll take the bed. I'll use the chair." Her silver eyes flicked up to him for the first time. There was no smile, but there was something else, something like disbelief. He set an extra blanket on the bed and stepped back. She climbed onto it, still holding her SATCHEL dot, before turning off the light. Jonas noticed something. She'd placed a small kitchen knife from her satchel on the floor beside her, close enough to grab if she needed it. He didn't comment. He understood. Outside, the rain kept falling, tapping softly against the window. Jonas sat in the chair, watching the shadows move across the room. This wasn't what he'd planned for his night. But somehow, he knew that from this moment on, his life had changed. Asterisk, a home of silence. The morning light crept through the thin curtains, turning the room a soft gray. Jonas woke to the faint sound of movement. The girl, still clutching her satchel, was standing in the corner of the room, eyes fixed on the door as if expecting someone to burst in. She noticed he was awake and immediately froze. "You can sit," Jonas said quietly. She nodded but didn't move until he walked to the kitchen. Her steps were silent as she followed, almost like a shadow. Jonas made breakfast, just reheated bread and a boiled egg. He set it in front of her. She looked at the food, then at him, as though unsure if she was allowed to eat before he did. "It's yours," Jonas said. "Eat." This time, she took small bites, her eyes darting to the window every few seconds. He realized she was listening for footsteps outside. When she was done, she wiped her hands on her tunic and said, "I can clean, wash dishes. I won't take much space." Jonas leaned back in his chair. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Don't have one." "Not anymore." He didn't push. "All right. We'll figure that out later." The sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway outside. Someone knocked sharp. 3 times. Jonas felt his jaw tighten. He motioned for her to stay silent and stepped to the door. A tall man in a long coat stood there, rain still dripping from his hood. His eyes were cold. "I'm looking for a girl," he said. "Violet skin, silver eyes. Belongs to a woman at the market." Jonas kept his voice even. "Haven't seen anyone like that." The man leaned closer. "If you have her, you're keeping stolen property. Desiree, don't forget debts." Before Jonas could respond, a small hand gripped the back of his shirt. She was standing behind him, eyes wide, but not saying a word. The man's gaze flicked to her. A slow smile spread across his face. "There she is." Jonas stepped forward, blocking her from view. "She's under my care now. You tell your friend she left her behind, and that's on her." The man's smile faded. "This isn't over." He turned and walked away, his boots echoing down the stairwell. Jonas closed the door and locked it. He turned to the girl, who was staring at him like she couldn't believe what had just happened. "You're safe here," he said. She swallowed hard. "Not for long." Jonas looked out the window toward the street below. She might be right, but now, letting her go wasn't an option. Asterisk. The unwanted visitor by evening. The rain had stopped, but the streets outside were still slick with water. Jonas kept glancing out the window, half expecting the man in the long coat to still be there. For a while, he saw no one. The girl sat on the floor near the heater, her satchel in her lap, staring into the metal grate as if the sound of the warm air was the only thing keeping her calm. Jonas poured 2 cups of tea, setting one near her. She didn't touch it. "Drink," he said. She shook her head. "Might need to leave fast. Hot things slow you down." Jonas frowned. That wasn't something a child should think about. The knock came again, 3 sharp raps, exactly like in the morning. Jonas moved to the door, heart steady but slow. He didn't open it right away. "Who is it?" "Just a friendly talk," came the voice of the man in the coat. Jonas unlocked the door halfway, but kept the chain on. The man leaned in, his hood down now, revealing thin, angular features and eyes the color of burnt copper. "You're making a mistake," the man said. That girl isn't worth the trouble. The woman who left her is willing to pay for her return. Not interested, Jonas replied flatly. The man's gaze shifted past him. She's Zyri blood. That means she belongs to her own kind. You? Keep her. You're stealing. And the Zyri don't forget thieves. From behind Jonas, the girl's voice rose small but sharp. I'm not theirs. Not anymore. Jonas looked back at her. This was the first time she had spoken in front of the man. The man smirked. Bold. You'll regret that. He reached into his coat, pulling out a thin piece of metal and ID tag. It had the girl's face on it, younger but unmistakable. Proof of ownership, he said, tapping it. Jonas's stomach turned. She's not a crate. She's not yours to claim. The man's eyes hardened. Last warning. You have 1 day. After that, accidents happen. He stepped back and disappeared into the shadows of the stairwell. Jonas closed the door fully this time and locked every bolt. The girl was standing stiff, her satchel clutched so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. They'll come again, she whispered. Then we'll be ready, Jonas said. He didn't add that he had no idea how. He sat back in the chair, mind racing. He'd seen the type before, men who didn't care about law or life, only about getting what they wanted. He looked at the girl. What's in the bag? She hesitated, then slowly opened the satchel. Inside was a folded cloth, a small wooden carving of some alien bird, and a worn piece of paper with a smudged stamp. This, she said quietly, is all I have from before. All they didn't take. Jonas leaned forward. The paper. It was a birth record. And it had more than just her alien lineage. It had a human name written beside it. He met her eyes. We're going to make this official. Tomorrow. Asterisk the paper shield. Jonas woke early, long before the sun rose over the colony's steel towers. The girl was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with her satchel at her feet. You said we're going, she reminded him in a quiet voice. He nodded. We are. Keep close to me. They left before the market stirred. The streets were damp, the air sharp with the smell of rain and old exhaust. Jonas kept scanning the alleys. No sign of the man in the coat. Yet the colony records office was. An ugly concrete building with lines of people waiting under flickering lights. Alien and human faces mixed, but not equally. The alien clerks at the front desk looked at Jonas and the girl with flat, unreadable eyes. Temporary guardianship. Form, Jonas said, placing his ID on the counter. One of the clerks, a tall, slate-skinned Varn, glanced at the girl. She's Zyri blood. Do you have a Zyri cosigner? No, Jonas said. Then this is unusual. The clerk's tone was slow, deliberate. Most humans don't adopt them. Jonas met his gaze. And most don't get left in the rain. The clerk hesitated, then slid the form toward him. Fill it out. Processing takes weeks. Jonas's jaw tightened. Make it days. The clerk raised a brow, but said nothing. As Jonas filled in the form, the girl stood beside him, silent, clutching her satchel. When he reached the given name line, he paused. The girl looked at the pen. Ari, she whispered. That's my name now. Jonas wrote it down without question. When they handed the papers back, the clerk scanned them. We'll contact you for a home inspection. Jonas nodded and led Ari outside. They walked through the busy street, past stalls just opening for the day. He bought her a small gray sweater from a vendor. She stared at it like it was made of gold. You'll need it, he said, placing it in her arms. She held it, but didn't put it on. I'm not worth this much. Jonas stopped. That's not your call to make. Before she could answer, his eyes caught movement across the street, someone leaning in the shadow of an archway. A hood, a familiar stance, the man in the coat. Watching. Jonas kept walking, not looking again, But his mind was already working. They would come for her. The only question was when. Asterisk. Shadows in the market. 2 days passed with no knock at the door, but Jonas knew it was only a matter of time. The home inspection notice arrived, printed in thin black letters on cheap paper. Inspection scheduled. Tomorrow at 14 o'clock. Jonas wasn't worried about the state of his apartment. He was worried about who might show up alongside the inspector. That morning, he decided they needed school supplies for Ari, partly to prepare for the future, partly to keep her mind busy. The market was busy, alive with the smell of fried dough, engine grease, and the sharp tang of alien fruit. Ari stayed close, her hand gripping the back of his jacket as they moved between stalls. She had the look of someone always searching for exits. They stopped at a small shop with paper, pens, and datapads stacked in neat rows. Jonas let her choose. She moved slowly at first, then picked out a bundle of red paper, her fingers brushing. It like it was something precious. Why red? Jonas asked. She shrugged, eyes down. Feels warm. As they stepped back into the street, Ari's grip on his jacket tightened. Jonas followed her gaze down the row, past a crowd of traders. Woman stood there, her clothes sharp and expensive, her posture stiff. The stepmother. She was speaking to someone Jonas couldn't see, but then her eyes flicked toward him and landed on Ari. Jonas didn't wait. Come on. They cut through a narrow side alley that smelled of rust and wet stone. Ari kept pace, breathing fast but silent. Only when they reached a quieter lane did Jonas stop. He knelt so he could look her in the eye. You're all right. Her voice shook. She tried to take me back. She won't, Jonas said. Not while I'm here. For the first time, Ari reached into her satchel and pulled out the red paper she had just bought. She tore off a small square, folded it carefully, and pressed it into Jonas's hand. It's for you, she said, so you don't forget. Jonas looked at the folded paper, small and fragile, and felt something shift in his chest. They walked home in silence. But as they neared the building, Jonas stopped short. A familiar figure was leaning against the wall near the door, the man in the coat. He smiled slowly when he saw them. Inspections tomorrow, Rel. I'll be there too. Asterisk, because I say. So the next day, the air in the apartment felt heavier than usual. Jonas moved through the small space, straightening the table, wiping the counter, making sure every corner looked lived in. Ari sat on the bed, knees tucked up, watching him without speaking. At 14 o'clock sharp, a firm knock rattled the door. Jonas opened it to find the inspector, a short, formal-looking human woman with a datapad and, as promised, the man in the coat. Standing just behind her, leaning against the wall with that same cold smile, the inspector stepped in. Routine home inspection for guardianship review, she said briskly. May I look around? Jonas nodded. The man in the coat stayed in the doorway, his eyes locked on Ari. She's coming back with me, he said casually, as though it were already decided. Jonas's jaw tightened. No, she's not. The inspector glanced between them. Is there a dispute over custody? She's mine, the man in the coat said smoothly. Zairi blood, property of her stepmother. I have proof. He pulled out the same ID tag as before, holding it up like it was a weapon. Jonas stepped forward. She's a child, not property. And she's under my guardianship, filed and approved. The inspector raised an eyebrow. Do you have the papers? Jonas handed over the documents. The inspector scanned them, frowned, and turned to the man. These are valid. Unless you have a counterclaim with legal standing, you have no right to remove her. The man's copper eyes narrowed. Legal standing means nothing in Zairi law. Good thing we're not on Zairi soil, Jonas said flatly. For a moment, the man just stared at him. Then he leaned closer, voice low. You can't protect her forever. Jonas didn't blink. I can protect her today, and tomorrow, and every day after that, because I say so. A small movement caught his attention. Ari had stood up, clutching her satchel to her chest. She walked over, slipping past Jonas, and stood directly between him and the man in the coat. Her voice was small but clear. "He's my dad." The inspector looked at her, then at Jonas, and entered a note into her datapad. Guardianship confirmed. This case is closed. The man in the coat glared once more, then turned sharply and left, his boots echoing down the hall. When the door closed, Jonas let out a slow breath. Ari was still standing there, looking at him like she'd just stepped into unfamiliar light. "You called me," he began. "Dad?" She finished for him, a faint smile on her face. "Because you are." That night, Jonas came home from a late shift to find Ari waiting at the door. She ran to him, sweater sleeves hanging loose, and said, "Dad, you're home." For the first time in years, Jonas felt like the word home actually meant something. Asterisk.